Hey, welcome to the show, and today we're going to talk about why shooting expired film is a good idea or a bad idea. We've all seen shots from expired film, and some of us have also shot expired film, and it still is something that we see in forums and online groups like Facebook groups asking if expired is okay, how much do we overexpose, what is the right price, and we also see prices of the market of expired film going up, sometimes to the point it is more expensive than the normal film. So I'm going to divide this video into three different aspects. I'm going to do pros, I'm going to do cons, and I'm going to do a conclusion. First, let me tell you that this came from a viewer of my Wednesday's live chat who asked me what was the right price to pay for a certain amount of expired film he had stumbled upon. So just letting you know that if you got any questions, just let me know and I'll try to solve it. Or if it's interesting enough, I'll make a video out of it. First thing that we have to say, it all depends on the user. Some people love the look of expired film. Some people don't mind that expired film looks a little different. And some people don't want expired film in their results. So that's the first thing we have to understand. Expired film will not always render the same way, and that is up to the user and his photography to be decided. If you want to keep on doing it or not do it, test it or not test it. So we're going to start with the pros. Let me tell you first that some pros are cons and the other way around. So depending on the prices or the results, they can be either good or bad depending on the user and the situation. So price. Usually cheap film, as when, for example, I started shooting film back in 2009, cheap film or expired film was cheap. Most studios had bulk amounts of film and they were just dumping it on eBay and just selling it at the whatever price it was because they were not concerned of making a lot of money back. They just wanted that film out of the studio so they could just continue with their work. I actually got offered from an eBay seller I bought a few batches from 1,200 rolls of Kodak Portra 400 NC, and this was in 220 format, and I paid $2 per roll for that film. Nowadays 220 film is a rare finding, and even more at $2 a roll. It wasn't very expired, but that tells you what kind of prices were available back then. But lately expired film has been going up in price to the point that it's more expensive than the same film not expired. And this is probably because most eBay sellers or people selling online are taking advantage that some customers want that expired look on their pictures. So be aware that if you're going to buy expired film, you might pay premium, and check what the new film is worth or if it's still in the market so you can, not pay more for something you can still buy off the shelf. Another pro for expired film is results. Some people, and especially the lomography group of users, love the expired film. They love that the color might shift. They love that the grain grows to the point that it sometimes just looks like balls of snow on your film. They love that you sometimes get like artifacts on your pictures, and that's why sometimes they use cheap plastic cameras or cameras that give them light leaks, and all of this is fine if that's what you're looking for. If that's your artistic view and that's what you want for your photography, expired film might be the thing for you. But do be careful because expired film will not always be consistent. If you're buying, for example, a box of Portra 160 VC, which is discontinued long ago, you might find that this film renders beautiful, but then you buy another box from some other seller that's being taken care of differently, and that will give you a different look. So if you want consistency, expired film will not be the best choice. I highly recommend you go for new film and maybe mistreat it in a certain way, but all together, so you can get some color shift or whatever. For example, doing cross processing or pulling or pushing your film will give you different aspect to your pictures with new film. So yeah, be careful. That can be a good or a bad depending on the user. Another point that could be a pro is the fact of shooting dinosaurs. And by this I mean you can be able to shoot expired film that has been discontinued. Me, as a lover of Portra 160 VC or the NC version, or sometimes Fuji Astia or the Aerochrome, or other emulsions that have been discontinued, Neopan 1600 or 400. Nowadays, all you can find is expired film. So if you're really a big fan or you have never tried a certain emulsion, it's a great way to try it out, but you're going to just find it expired. So be aware that that expired film will give you funky results, sometimes extra grain or some trouble on the way. And that would be pretty much about how much I can say for pros for expired film. Now we're going to go with the cons, which are very similar depending on the point of view, as I said before. First one would be price. As I mentioned before, prices can sometimes be higher than the same film not expired. For example, I've seen Tri-X or maybe Portra or things like that being sold for higher prices than the real film fresh. So be aware that maybe sometimes a deal looks like a deal, but it's not. Check shipping, check the seller, and check what the current price is for that film. So yes, be careful with the price, and if you're going to buy expired film, make sure it's a good deal if you're going to take that risk. Another con is inconsistency. As I said before, depending on the user, you might want certain results or others. If you want consistency, it's not going to be the film for you. As I said, depending on the batch and how it's being stored, you're going to get one look or the other. Also, if you add the price of developing and scanning your film and the price of the film, if you had to pay for it, some people get free film, you're adding a lot of money to maybe not great results. So beware of that problem if you're shooting expired film. Also, if you're new to film, you don't want to start with expired film, even though it might be cheaper, because you might be doing things wrong like metering, you might be developing wrong or scanning wrong. So if you're adding that variable of film that could be giving wrong results, you won't know what step you made a mistake on. So try to start with new film, try to buy some cheap film, and just do it yourself till you get consistent results. Once you know that your way of shooting is correct, then you can start adding expired film or experimenting. Another problem is that film is alive, and the moment they make it, that's why it has an expired date. It starts degrading to the point that grain grows, like to the point that it's unbearable, and also you lose shadow detail and sometimes gain contrast that you might not want, or lose contrast. So once you buy expired film, make sure you freeze it or make sure that it's being frozen, and maybe you'll be lucky and that film is in good condition. But you will notice, and I will show the results here, that the shadows will turn muddy on color negative. You'll get magenta cast on E6, and you'll lose contrast and sometimes get fog on your black and white film. So if you do decide you're going to go for expired film, I'm going to give you a few tips that I've learned throughout the years. First one is to overexpose your film. There's a general rule of thumb that's basically overexpose a stop per decade. So if your film, like this film here, expired in 2005, you want to give this 800 film 400 ISO. So you're overexposing it one stop. You can probably overexpose it a few stops because it's color negative and it's fine with that, and it will look a little better. That grain won't be so obvious and those shadow details won't be so muddy. Also, depending on what film, it ages better or worse. Black and white film is the one that does best with aging. So if you're buying black and white Tri-X or Plus X or Double X or any of those old films, or Neopan 1600 or 400, those films will be probably better. Also, lower ISOs last longer. So if you're buying that Neopan 1600, be sure to overexpose it to ISO 1000 or something like that, and you'll be okay. Then the second one is color negative. This film, for example, I exposed at ISO 100 or 125 and it looked pretty good. You could probably expose it at ISO 80 and you'll make it look even a little better. It kind of like observes the problems into that extra light you're giving it. And last, the worst film for aging is E6. As I told you, even sometimes fresh E6 that hasn't been properly taken care of has color cast. So that means that your skin tones will turn magenta. Sometimes you get like those blacks also turn muddy. There's no detail in them, and that's a problem. So make sure E6 you buy as fresh as possible and stored properly. Another tip is to freeze it. The moment you buy that film, whatever the seller said, just freeze it. Freeze it if you're not going to use it straight away, but if you freeze it, you stop that chemical degradation. At least not stop it, but you slow it down as much as you can, and that film will be okay when you pull it out. Another thing is you're going to expect failure. A lot of us have bought expired film and found out that it wasn't usable. Either the grain was unbearable or it had such a shift that it wasn't nice. So you can always try to develop it as black and white and get a usable negative, whatever, if it's slide film, color negative, or black and white. Of course, black and white you can develop as black and white, but make sure you check online for a few resources of how to develop. But most people use Rodinal for black and white, developing with different films. Other things that people do is grab E6 and cross-process it. That means developing it as C41 film, and that will give you such a color cast and interesting colors that no one will really know if it was expired in the beginning. And the last tip is to buy new film. As much as expired film is fun and sometimes cheaper, you want to make sure that film manufacturers are still in business in the future. So don't just rely on expired film, and buy some new film every now and then. And as I said before, check that what you're paying for is a good price for that film, and you can't buy it fresh for less. So as a conclusion, I'll say that expired film is very much up to the user. If you don't mind some grain or color shift or any kind of problem from that aging, go for it. Maybe you like it. The bigger the batch you buy, probably the more fun you're going to have, as you can learn how that film renders and use it to your own expression. But if you don't like it, just keep on buying new film and enjoying a film photography. Also, this video comes with a written article that I left on my website. If you want to check it out and see examples of the film or that batch of 1,200 rolls of film, just check the link below. Thanks to Svein for bringing up this topic. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.